Good afternoon. We extend to you a warm welcome from Provo, Utah. I'm Sister Esplin and will be the host for today's class. Today's class is offered to the general public by the BYU Family History Library. Today's class is on the French Republic records and calendar from 1792 to 1815. Our presenter today is Liz Hutchison. Liz has been a former missionary at the BYU Family History Center, has completed genealogical coursework at BYU, and has a love of learning and family history. At this point, I'll turn the time over to Liz.
Okay, so today's going to be all about the French Republic calendar. So right here, I have kind of a interesting little synopsis of what the French Revolutionary calendar is. In 1792, the French started to have, well, before then they had a little bit of trouble. But in 1792 is when France was really in the thick of the French Revolution. And going all the way to 1805, they had something called the First French Republic. And this is going to affect all records throughout a lot of Europe as Napoleon started to expand the empire. There's a lot of records from different countries that were actually written in French and changed by this French Republic. So that's why it's so important to go over it. Right here is kind of a summary of each month in the French Republic. Since the French, they had this thing called the Ancien Régime, and that means like the old regime or the old way of doing things. And they were sick and tired of the monarchy being over them, and then the church kind of having too much power over them, in particular the Catholic Church. And so as they were having their revolution, they started to try and get rid of every single association that they had with royalism and also with the church. And this resulted in a lot of changes. In fact, Notre Dame, the cathedral, that was almost destroyed during this time period. It was Victor Hugo that actually saved that by writing The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And so what they would do is they would actually go through, and anything that they determined invaded the public sphere, that would be eliminated. They would melt down the bells at churches, they take down the crosses, deface statues, all sorts of things. And that's what's going on in France. They soon start to get this power, and they're going to, now that they're kind of all together and they form this republic, in about 1795, they start fighting their enemies, their longtime enemies. And these were the Habsburg family, or the Austrians, that had control over parts of Belgium at that time. So they were able to actually take over all of Belgium from the Habsburgs. And at first, the Belgians were okay with it because a lot of them spoke French, so it wasn't too much of a change. But as time went on, they started requiring that all official documents be written in French, not Dutch. And then eventually they tried to get rid of speaking Dutch, which was not very popular for these little areas that spoke dialects that were quasi kind of a little bit Dutch, but also had other influences from French and Germanic language. One of the things that they changed that can make it really hard for genealogy is the calendar. The calendar system, it has the year that's based on Jesus and his birth and life in the year of our Lord. They have months that referred to kings and other gods. You have August, King Augustus. And then beyond that, there were actually 7 days of the week that was very Christian based. And each day had a different name of a saint that they would celebrate at certain times. So this calendar, the Gregorian calendar, which is what we use today, was not going to fly under the new French Republic. They decided we need to get rid of that and replace it with something that's new and French. And so they got a team together. They got mathematicians, they got astrologists, they got scientists of all type, and they tried to come together. They even got a playwright to be the more creative person. They got them all together and came up with a whole new calendaring system. And it can be hard in genealogy because about 1795, depending on what areas were conquered by France at that time, bam, it's just a shift into a whole new calendar system. As you can see here, they had new months, 3 months for each season. Autumn always ends in A-I-R-E or air. Winter, you had niveaux, so everything ended in O-S-E. You had spring and summer. They were trying to even make everything decimals. Instead of 7 days a week, which was very Christian, they changed it to 10 days every week. We don't really run into that in the records, thank goodness, because that'd be confusing. But anyways, one of the websites that I use the most is the Napoleon Calendar Converter. There's many different websites that have just as good conversions. You can use anything. They even have PDFs that you can look up and print if you prefer a print copy. But this is just what I look up, and I always look up Napoleon Calendar Converter just to get right to this page so I don't have to navigate through it. One thing that's interesting is each of these months were named after the season, things that were particularly happening. You had Vendémiaire, the grape harvest. You had the month of mist, the month of cold. Snow is niveaux. And these are kind of examples of what it might look like in a record. It can be hard to tell, especially, I've gotten Brumaire and Frimaire mixed up. If they weren't really very good writing on the F, I sometimes get them mixed up. But this is just kind of an idea of how it looks. You got the month of fruits, and one of my favorites is the Flowery Month. Now, this wasn't the only change. They decided they needed a new day of the year for the New Year's. And so they started it in particular on the 22nd of September, 1792. This was important because it was not only the autumn equinox, but it was kind of when the Republic was proclaimed. So that's their day one, and it's a few years down the road. I think in France, it was in 1793, and then it invaded parts of Belgium a little later. But that was year one. So no more in the year 1792, it became in year one of the French Republic. So the years are going to be different. And then the months are going to be different. Every month has 30 days within it. And every day actually had a name of a certain flower or something in nature, sometimes an agricultural tool, just to kind of get rid of the whole saint part of it and to try to put something new, French, and very logical and grounded in nature onto that. So how you use this is when you find a date in a record. For example, down here you can see in French, a French Republic date. And what it says is the 10th day, dixième, so D-I-X-I-E-M-E. That would be the 10th day, jour, du mois de, that means of the month of. And you can kind of see where those similarities are with the English. Then we get our month. And this is Thermidor. And Thermidor is, I believe, the very hot month. And it makes sense because it's about, let's see, Thermidor covers about July 19th to August 17th. So it kind of correlates with today. So this is 10 Thermidor, and it's year 9. You'll have to definitely look at vocab and just kind of practice getting used to the flowery. I mean, look how beautiful this writing is. It can be hard to read. So you take that date, which is 10 Thermidor, year 9, and you write it in the Republican spot. So 10, they have a drop-down list, Thermidor, year 9. They're going to be in Roman numerals. And then what you do to get the conversion is you press Gregorian, and it gives you the equivalent. This is important to do because you will be getting, even for years after these records, you will be getting these marriages that mention the birth of the groom or the bride, and it's going to be, if it's during a certain time period, in the Revolutionary or the Republican calendar. So you got to really kind of work on, and sometimes you'll actually be given a date, you'll find a date, and you have to go ahead and convert it to the Republican in order to find it in the actual catalog. So this is fairly easy. One of the things that's difficult is just getting through these Republic records. And I talked about this, I touched on this last week, but there are some indexed records. This is 1807, which is just after the French Revolution calendar. So they switched back starting January 1st, 1806, switched right back to the Gregorian calendar. So it's only that little period, but it affects everyone's life going on. And this is an indexed record. And just to kind of show you how important it is to really read that original and get as much information as possible, this is what is included. They have that the marriage took place on 14 October 1807. It took place in Charleroi, Hainaut, Belgique. The name of the groom is François-Joseph Delmotte. The father of the groom, Henri-Joseph Delmotte, and then the mother, Marie-Françoise Charles. And then we have the bride, Marie-Anne-Joseph Mandelier, with her parents being Jean-Baptiste Mandelier and Barbe Carpet. So that's a lot of information, but when you actually look at the original record, there's actually things that are missing that can be treasures when it comes to genealogical work. So in this record, and you'll definitely have to get used to how each person that's recording writes these down. But in this one, it takes place on the 14e. So quattro, but it's 14. That is the French for 14th. Day is jour, like a journal, of the month of October, year 1807. The next part that you have to look for is comparu. Et comparu. This word means appeared, and that's where the record's going to actually start. The name of the groom is François-Joseph Delmotte, and what's added here is his age and birth. That isn't always included in those indexed records. So this says he is age 29 years old, and it says 10, so D-I-X, 10 months, 15 days. What they would do is they would actually calculate the exact age to the day. But this wasn't always accurate. So if you see that, it could possibly be a sibling that was deceased prior to that. And we will cover that in the next weeks. Anyways, right here it has his birth, which wasn't included in that index. Né, or like your maiden name is Né, that's how we write it in English, but that means birth. He was born in Jumet, or Jumet, on the 29th of November, and then mille is 1,000, set is 700, is cent, because there's 100 cents in a dollar, 78, which is 78. So you're going to have to really struggle with these numbers, trying to get the French words correlated with what it is in English. But that right there is a birth record that you can look up, and you can maybe find siblings of this person. And that wasn't included in the index. The next part is they talk about fils, that means son, of the deceased, and then this is the name of the father, the Henri-Joseph Delmotte. They have his death date. So décédé is like decedent, the death. He died in Jumet on the 25th of December, and then it gives that date. So you can take that information and then go to that area and look for that record, and it will give you what? It will give you his parents. It'll give you maybe someone who was maybe a son that appeared and was saying, this is when my father died. Then it gives right here the mother's name, which is Marie Françoise Charlet, I believe, or Charles. She's also deceased. So this one record gives you also her death that wasn't included in the index, and you can look in Jumet, that's where she died, so same place this whole family's from, on the, and I'll just say the date, 30th of March, 1788. You look that up and you get her parents, and you can possibly find siblings and other relations. Then we get to the part with the bride, demoiselle. That's kind of like a mademoiselle, but it's smaller, so she's a lady. Marie-Anne Joseph Mandelier gives her age and birth that wasn't included on that indexed record. Her parents happen to be living, because I've looked through this record. Jean-Baptiste Mandelier, and then Barbe Carpe. So you can see how important it is to look through those original records, and you're going to have to struggle through it, trying to get each word, trying to figure out the writing, but you can get really important things. One of the most important things is when you find children. This particular one, they had no children to declare, but I've come across others that do. And so this is kind of going to be the part one of what's going next week. We are going to look at one marriage record completely, examine it, and then the next week, after we write everything down, next lesson will be finding those records that are mentioned. So I'm going to kind of also showcase how to locate this particular record in Family Search through catalog. And this is the record. We are looking for a Louis Balès and Marie Berger, and it's a marriage in Gilly, and all I know is that it's in October of 1822. So when you're using Family Search and you want to find that record manually, what you first do is you press this search button up at the top. Some of these acts will be indexed, in which case you can look through records, or you can just look at your family tree and see if any hints come up. This particular one, though, I'm going to find through the catalog. When you open the catalog, it gives you a place, and this is where you type in the place. And it used to be that you had to write in Belgium and then Hainaut Gilly in order to actually locate. But now you can put in that smallest location and it will bring it up automatically. So you select that and press search. What's important about the availability, I like to do any. Online means you can view it online. If you want one that's only viewable at a family history center, or you want to exclude that, you have to be on a certain site that has a family history library in order to access that record. But I just like any because it kind of gives you everything that they have on that particular location. All right, so if you remember, we're looking for October 1822 in a marriage. 1822 is going to hit civil registration because that's after that 1795 period where French took over, and they were like, no longer are we going to have these records be handled by the church. You need to come and do civil registers. So this is what opens up when you click civil registration, is everything that they have. You look through the first one, and you can see this word naissance, and it looks like it goes through. Then you have publications, pièces, annexe au mariage. You don't really need to view these because the marriage record itself is going to include all the information. So you can see it's a little overwhelming to look at, but it looks like they have them for each year at a certain point. And so this one doesn't look like it has marriages other than publications. So then you go back and then you look at the second one. Okay. Another pièce de mariage. What this is in order to get married, they had to actually deliver handwritten extracts of each record. So they would keep them together in this little packet. And you don't need this because it's going to be included in the marriage record. So seeing that these are all pièces de mariage, yep, looks like it's all that. That's not where you look. So then there's this third one that was purple from the beginning because that's the one we're looking at. And it's from 1797 to 1900. As you open this up, it's going to have this overwhelming list that you have to find. Where is the marriage that covers 1822? So naissance, this has another set of births, and then you hit marriages. Luckily, this is the earliest kind of time period. Otherwise, you'd have to go, if it was like 1900, you'd have to go down and go through these and say, okay, is there any marriages that happen to cover? Oh, that's closer, 1867 to 1877. But this one's pretty easy because it's just right here. You click the camera button, that means you can view it online. Now, as you can see, there's 2,132 images on this film alone. We don't want to look through every single one. So what you do is you look for these big black division points, and this is where they kind of give a synopsis of what you might find in this record. So it's in Gilly, so correct place, as you can see, and it covers 1862 to 1864. A lot of times these records would lose their binding, and unfortunately, it would be very mixed up. And I've come across it where it'll have no order to it chronologically, and you have to almost go through it every single book to try to find the year. This one's a little easier, but I know for a fact just from finding it this morning that it's way down the line. There's another black division point. We're still in Gilly, 1865 to 1866, so that's still too late. But that record said it covered earlier time periods, so this is an example of one that's not quite organized. So then you keep on going, and here's number 3. And this is Gilly, and it covers 1797 to 1840. That's perfect. That's going to cover that 1822 time period. So we're on 787, and we need to find 1822. This is where you kind of have to take a guess and just pop in and see if you can read what year it is. Oh, look, year 9, since the French Republic calendar was only really in Belgium between 1795 and 1805. You can say, we need to go about 10 or 20 years past that. So I'm going to skip forward even more. Let's go to right there. Here it has the date written out. L'an, or annual, like that would be year. In the year 1000, this is 1000. Huit is 8. Cent, 100. So in the year 1800, and then you'd have to look this up, but this is 13. So we're in 1813. We still got a little ways to go. Let's see what this is. All right. So we just popped into this one, and thank goodness it's actually written out here. This isn't the exact date. This is when they did some signing of at the top, at the beginning of the register. But you can see that it says 1800, so that's 1800, 17. So that being said, I'm going to skip to about 1100 and see if we can get closer to 1822. Oh yeah, we're definitely getting closer. This is in the year 1819. 10, which is 10, and then 9 is 9. So we're almost there. At this point, you can kind of go, okay, if this is 1820, which it is, then you can kind of look at how it's formatted and go, ooh, it looks like it ends right about here for that year. This might be 21. Let's see if it is. Yep, 21. So you kind of look at where that blank page is going to be, and it looks like it could be here or it could be there. So I'm just going to pop in right here. Okay, we're in our year. So 1822, 22. That's French for 1822. And we're going to look in October, and we don't have an exact date. So considering that this record has about that much, I'm just going to hit right here and see if this is near the end of the year. Okay, 1822, the 11th of October. So since that's the 11th of October, I want to make sure we're at the beginning of October. We don't know the exact date, but we want to look and say, okay, is this the beginning of October down here? Let's see, that's August. Août is how they pronounce it in French. It's weird. It's A-O-U-T. So it's going to be either this page or the next. And it happens to be this page right here. So this record, what we're going to do is we're going to read it, and we're going to actually write down every single record that you can extract from this. And then the next week, we're going to find those records. So it's going to be a 2-part series, and you're going to have to use some of that French Republic records because, you know, if a marriage took place in 1822 and the kid that's getting married is about 20, well, they were probably born during that French Revolution Republican calendar time period. But these are slightly older people getting married. So we'll start with the date. In the year 1822, on the 10th. This is a D. You can kind of see it repeats throughout, but that's going to be the date of your actual marriage. So you can put, okay, I know that it's 10th of October, 1822, and it's in Gilly. That's what you have to look at first. And then it's pretty simple. You have to find the word sont comparus. That's the appeared. I'm way fast at finding it because you kind of get used to where it's at. But this is comparus, C-O-M-P-A-R-U-S. And that's where the groom's going to appear, is right here. So we have Louis Balès, and it's going to give a lot of good information, in particular, his birth. So it says born in Lambusart. So you kind of go, okay, I don't know what Lambusart is, but that's going to be where he was born. Domicilié, domicile, that means he's residing. So he resides in Gilly, which is exactly where this marriage took place. That makes sense. This word is his profession, bûcheron. It kind of looks like butcher, and in a sense it is. He is a lumberjack. So he butchers those trees. Then you have his age. Really easy to tell where age is in French because it's âgé. And so I'm going to write down his age because that's pretty important. His age is 64 years old. Soixante, which is 60, and then quatre, it's pronounced cat, like a cat, is going to be 64. So he's age 64 in 1822. And you can use that, and since I don't like doing math right on the spot, actually, let me do that. I'm going to do minus 64. Okay, 1758. This is the first record we will end up looking for, is about 1758 in Lambusart. Let me just put that in the right place. And then here we can put the name and details. So that's going to be Louis Balès's birth record. Okay. So that's the first thing we get to look for next week. Let's see, sometimes they include the births. In fact, most often they have the exact date. In this case, they didn't for whatever reason. He is the son. So right after that age, fils is the word, French word for son. The female of fils is, so there's fils that's spelled like that. And then the female is fille. So it's got a little E on the end and 2 L's. He is the son, and then it says majeur. That means that he is adult. Otherwise, it would say a minor. He is the adult son of Barthélemy Balès. So then you go, okay, we have that down now, that his father's named Barthélemy Balès, and then it gives his mother, Dorothy, and then I think that's Angon, but it could be Mangon. When you're looking through these records, don't stress too much about getting the name exactly right, because there were so many different spellings of each name that you're going to come across it all. And hopefully you can find a record that will really make sure that you have the right name. Okay, this word right here is really important. Décédé. Décédé, D-E-C-E-D-E-S, is French for deceased. So what they're saying is the 64-year-old who's getting married, his parents are deceased. And this is information that wouldn't be included in an indexed record. So it says deceased, and then it says a weird word right here, and then look at that scribble. That's going to be the place. You know, at first I was like, is it Lodelandsart? Because that's actually a place in Belgium. But you can use words around it if you can't tell in particular what that is, because it's obviously been kind of written over. You can go, okay, let's see what this is. And it's audit. So audit, it's not that quite. I happen to know, though, that it's spelled like this. There's a space in between. At the said. Whenever you see the French word dit, it means the said or at the same place, essentially. So this saying at the said, and then it gives, I can only tell there's an L, A-R-T. This happens to be a really messed up spelling of Lambusart, which is where the son was born. So you're going to run into those issues too, where some of them will write right over it. I've seen it before where they'll say, in Ransart, jeudi. And then they will put a different place, Lambusart. When you see this, that means they made an error. If the person that was writing the record didn't want to, cross out the record or write over it and make it look all ugly, they would use this word. And this is French for I say. So je dis, I say. It's another way of saying or rather. When you make a mistake, you'll say, oh, he was born in Ransart, or rather, no, he was born in Lambusart. That's one thing that you might come across that can be really messy, because you'll look at it and you're like, wait, I thought he was born in this place. So to start off with, we know that someone died in Lambusart. Since you might not know French and have not studied it, you might not notice this detail, which is an S at the end. That's plural. So they both died in that place. So looks like we have a few different places to look for a death. And we'll see if it has the actual date. Barthélemy Balès, and then Dorothée, Angon or Mangon, could be either. Let's see if it has a date. This is a P, E-R-E. Père is very close to things like padre, and it means father. So they're saying the father died, and this is going to be the date. And here's where our French Revolution calendar is going to come into use. This is le 17. If 10 is 10 and set looks like 7, like a sept or a heptagon, I guess, then that's going to be the 17th of the flower month, Floréal. So 17, actually that's going to be for the dad, so we might as well put 17 Floréal, and then we need to know what year. So of the flower month, and then we'll go over here, and AN, annual, that means year, and here it is, the day. When you look that up, it's almost like 1, but it has a Z in it, that's 11. So year 11, which would be XI, like that. So year 11 is where you're going to look and find his death. And when you see that, it might include his parents, might include whether or not his wife is alive or dead. So you're never done with this, really. It just keeps leading you down that rabbit hole. Anyways, let's see if it says where the mom died and when she died. We already know she died in Lambusart. But this is where something's very irregular that I noticed. I'll just say what it is. Right here, la mère, that means mother. And there's this big long word that means antérieurement. And so when I saw that, I was like, she died before him. Okay, because that's the French. They will almost never have this because for the most part, people got those death records in. But it looks like they have no clue when she died, as is stated by the same act. So since I know French, I'm able to tell, okay, died before, at some point before year 11, and they might have not been able to find the actual record, meaning you might not be able to find it either. But if you do, then that's an extra thing. Now that we have this right here, the 17 Floréal year 11, I think it's important to always get the other date, because when you're looking through a record, you're going to want to know what year that is so you can get right in that area. So 17, and then Floréal, flower, and then year, there's 10 and 11. You press Gregorian and it gives you 7 May 1803, which makes sense because May is quite the season for flowers. So now that you have that, you can later go through Lambusart, wherever it is, and you can find those records. Okay, so let's go back to our record. Now we are on to the bride. So already we have 3 things that weren't included in the indexed record, if it were indexed. We have the bride, and her name is Marie-Thérèse Berger. We're going to have similar information here. It says née, N-E-E, that's female born. So now we're going to get where she was born and maybe when, we'll see. So born and domicile, born and residing. And where was it? It's in Gilly. So we can look possibly in this record and find that. Ménagère is a French word, and it's on the occupation list. If you look on the BYU Family History website and look at the classes, there should be one that's called Reading French Records in Belgium. And I've included this, but it means housekeeper. For the most part, all the women are housekeepers. Here's age. So here's where we're going to get her age, and she is 49. So 40. You can see the qua, which is like a quadro, you know, there's 4, and then neuf is 9. So 49 years old. 49 years old. And once again, we're going to go 1822 minus 49 is 1773. They don't have her birth either. Usually they would, but we're going to look in Jilly next week for her birth, and it's going to be about, and I already forgot it, 1773. Okay. And this is the birth, yeah, death right there, for the birth of Marie-Thérèse Berger. Okay. So there's another record we're going to have to look for. It says that she is the daughter. So see that F-I-L-L-E? That's daughter. Daughter of Nicola Berger. So the father's Nicola Berger. And of. E-T means and. Of will indicate the mother. So the mother is Marie Joseph Ma-O. You'll notice this word. We've come across it before. This means they died. And just like above, they're both deceased. See that S right there. If it was just an E or an EE, that would be feminine and singular. But since there's that S there, we know that they both died in Jilly. So now there's some more deaths we're going to have to look up eventually. Okay, and so far it's going to be the death of Nicola Berger, and then the death of Marie-Joseph Ma-O. You know, you might look at the Ma-O and go, I can't even tell what that is because I'm used to that name. One thing that I've done is I look in tables and sometimes they'll have different spellings, things that are a little more legible, but you just kind of have to really digest how this person wrote it. So yeah, that's M-A-H-A-U-X, believe it or not. Okay, so going on, let's see if they have dates for these people. Le père, so you see father right there, and it is giving the date of death, which makes our job a lot easier. 25 March. So this isn't in the revolutionary calendar, it's in the Gregorian. So you're going to go, okay, the death of the father is going to be 25 March. Let's see if I can find it again. 1700, so 1000. And for I'm pretty sure for quite a few years, it's going to be the year 1000 that you're looking for. So you're looking for 700, so 1700. And then 91. The French, they like to do fourscore and then add a number. This is saying 411. So that will be included in the handout, or you can look up on Family Search the French genealogical word list, and that will help you be able to tell that that is 91. So 1791, there's something you need to look up, and when you look it up, you might find his parents. You might find another kid. Okay, let's see if the mother has a death that's listed. So we have 49 ans. Let's get back to where we were. Oh, I see it right here. Once you get the date, you can, for the most part, just skip everything and just look for those keywords. The keyword here is mother, mère. Now, this is also irregular. I've never seen this before. So that's why I decided to go over this. This says depuis environ 22 ans. Depuis means since. Environ literally means around or about. 22 years ago. So it looks like they don't really know when she died. There's not really a date, but it's about 22 years ago. So we're going to know that you're going to look about 1800, but there's something fascinating here that I've never seen before, but it makes sense. Let me read it. Okay, so it says, this is attested by the sermon or by the declaration made by 4 witnesses that are here below signed. I know you can't read that fast, but this is just so cool. The death was not stated in the record, in the registries of this destination. So what they're saying right there is they never recorded that death act. So we had to have a bunch of witnesses say, about 22 years ago, she died. Now, 1800, it doesn't surprise me that they didn't record stuff then. In different parts of Belgium, there were quite the wars going on. So this one you won't be able to find, but at least you know you can put that on her tree. So I'm just going to kind of strike it out because you're not going to find it. They looked and it was never written. So this is the only record that mentions her death, which is why it's so important to read the original. Okay, we're going to move on. Died in Gilly. Okay. Once you get past here, it's going to be a lot of stuff that you don't need to know about. They're going to include dates of publications, which are going to include the exact same information that we're finding from the record. So you don't have to worry about it. Oh, I looked at the wrong page. But there's a few things to look at. So you're going to look au nom de la loi, but basically they like to write, once they are officially getting married, they like to write it in beautiful letters. Pretty easy visually for us to find. So Louis Balès and Marie-Thérèse Berger were united in marriage. So after all of the legal talk, they were united in marriage. This is where you're going to look for 2 things to see if you need to find more records. And they're going to be children, and you're going to look for witnesses. French word for children is, or child is enfant. Witnesses is témoin. For the most part, they aren't really always related. So we'll come across that. Okay, so when I see a aussitôt, that's where I get really excited. These are records of children that were illegitimate for whatever reason. And what it says is, and as soon as this was done, as soon as they were united in marriage, the said couple declared. So when you see that word déclaré, you can kind of know there's going to be children. And this is where it's really rare. Usually there's 1. Occasionally I've come across 2 children, but this is an older couple and they have 5 children that they are now going to legitimize by this marriage. So right here, 5 enfants. So that record that would never include this is going to add 5 spots for you to look up. A lot of follow-through work. So it's in this commune. Might take you a little bit longer to figure that out, but that's Gilly. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste this throughout. Rest of the records are there. This is where it gets hard. You can see where it says date. This is going to be the first child. And this is where I had to keep going back because to keep track of that line is so hard. So the first child was born 10, which is 10. That looks a lot like January, and it is. 1800, so wheat is 8, 1810. So the date is going to be 10 January 1810. And then they give the name, Célestine. So you go, okay, birth of Célestine. She will be actually listed under her mother's name. Since she wasn't legitimate at the time of her birth, she will be Célestine Berger. But because of this marriage, she will become in future records Célestine Balès. So that's kind of something that can be hard if you don't look at this and figure it out. Okay, the next date is right here. We have 22 February. And let's see what year it is. 1800, Set. So set is like heptagon, so 7. 1807. Okay, good info. Let's see what the name is. Oh, Marie Desiree. Okay, so now we're on to the next one. In the date, you kind of have to look at that for this case, but usually you'll only deal with one. Date of the 15th of February. So you put 15 February, year 1809. That's 9. So honestly, at this point, you can probably just go to, I don't know, 1799 and just check for everyone with that last name instead of going through this. But it's also really helpful to just find out what it is. So 1809, the name is going to be Jean-Joseph. Okay, a boy. The next one, you see en date, 2, this is de, December, 1810. That's 10. This is kind of interesting. This was a really close birth. Let's see. So, en date de décès, décembre. Oh, the 2. So 2. Oops. 2 December 1810. Notice how close that is. I mean, it's enough time, right? But that's pretty close. So you're going to find 2 children in that year. And it's the birth of Louis. Okay, there's another one. Now we got our last one. On the day of the 24. So that's cat, quadro, 24 January. The year is 1815. And then the name of the last child you're going to find is Pierre Joseph. Now that's a lot. I went through the witnesses, which you will probably have to do, just seeing if there's any last names that look like it. None of them are related. So we're not going to even go through that right now. But out of this one record, you're going to find information for 1, 2, 3, 10 to 11, and maybe 9, since there's that one that was before and we have no clue. But all of that information you can look up in those areas, and you can extend generations, you can find siblings, and you can build on that. And that's what we're going to be doing next week. So I just want to finish. I know that's very overwhelming, all this information, but as you get used to how to read these, and it might take you an hour at first to go, okay, what is that letter? But as soon as you do it, you'll be able to quickly spot, hey, look, Josephine, Desiree. Oh, there's a capital. Look, here's sont residing, domicilié, and sont comparu. So you just have to kind of get used to it. And the records are organized very similar in the Dutch versions as well. So I'm going to turn the time over to Sister Esplin now.
Thank you so much, Liz. This has been awesome. I think I can actually start to do some of this. If I could just keep remembering all the things you taught us, it's just amazing.